There was a time when parents of teenagers only had to worry about heavy petting. Now they need to know about the sexual implications of heavy texting. Adolescents sharing sexually explicit images and talk through texting, tweeting, and online chatting is increasingly common. But what you may not appreciate is how new technologies and social media are accelerating the lives of teenagers. Lucia O'Sullivan has been studying those changes as part of her research into the sexual behavior of teens. The UNB psychologist is lecturing tonight on tweeting, texting, teens, and chat, the internet, and sex in the lives of youth. Lucia O'Sullivan, good to have you join us today. Thank you. You've come up with some startling observations in your research, and I want to start with what appears to be a relationship between texting and sexual behavior. What have you found?
Well, it's quite interesting. A study came out earlier this year that found that there was a profile of heavy texters that was different from all other teens, that they tended to have a high-risk profile for a number of different health behaviors, heavy drinking, illegal drug use, and also some sexual risk behaviors. And I analyzed some data that I collected from New Brunswick high school students, and I found that there weren't really different in terms of the health behaviors, but they were different in terms of sexual behaviors. And in particular, young people who are very heavy texters, so that there's a nice spectrum of use, but the ones who are at the high end were 4.5 times more likely to report oral sex and vaginal intercourse a year later compared to their peers.
Wow. So is that because heavy texting betrays social neediness in some ways?
It's very likely. It's really just early days in the research, and we'll need to do a lot more in order to get a better idea of what's going on. Yeah. And it's a little unusual to find that one particular type of technology is related in this way, but likely that heavy texters do have a greater need to connect. Texting resolves a lot of issues people have about feeling lonely or socially anxious, and it helps them feel like they're in the loop. Yeah. And maybe sexual activity does something as well, connects people, and the two might be correlated in that way.
So there may be a relationship between heavy texting and earlier sexual activity.
Possibly, yeah.
There's also, you're also understanding changes in how technology affects the teenager's view of intimacy and privacy. What's going on there? Well,
we tend to be certainly a much more oversharing world than we ever were before. Right. You just have to look at the spate of reality TV shows or the popularity of Facebook and the people who are updating their status every 2 minutes to know how much people are providing the finer details of their lives
intimacies
in a way like no other. But young people today seem to have much fewer inhibitions about providing those details, and that extends even to their sexual lives. So they tend to talk a lot more with their friends about their sexual lives. They will reveal a lot more through technology. In fact, all of us do that. There is something very unique to most of the technologies we use, the communication forms, that promotes a lot of that. For instance, it's very private, it's very accessible. There's this feeling that you're invisible in a way. There's no nonverbal cues, the contextual cues are missing. So we're bolder in what we self-disclose, and as a result, people tend to reveal a lot more detail and seek a lot more private information than they would ever do face-to-face.
Dangerous ground for the inexperienced. So, at this point, I can hear in my head parents at home talking about, all right, we're going to take away her cell phone and we're going to keep him away from the computer. That solves the problem. What should the parents of teens take away from your observations?
Well, there seems to be three main points I should make at that juncture. One is that we will never, ever return to a pre-technology era. That train really has left the station, that we we're in love with our technologies, and we'll never go back. So that part is clear. In some ways, we have to embrace that. The second point is we will never, ever, ever, ever prevent teenagers from engaging in sex. That's their job. They're becoming adults. That's one of the many transitions they need to make. And no matter what we do to try and prevent or stop that, it almost never ever works. But most importantly, I think, is to really understand that if you stay aware, stay up to date and current, but definitely talk to the youth in your life early, often, keep it open and non-judgmental, and then pretty much get out of the way. You really do need to do that.
Good advice. Lucia O'Sullivan, fascinating research, and good to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Lucia O'Sullivan is the Canada Research Chair in Adolescents' Sexual Health Behavior at UNB Fredericton. Her lecture, Tweeting, Texting, Teens and Chat, the Internet and Sex in the Lives of Youth, takes place tonight at Fredericton High School.